I love making pedals. It wasn't easy to master. It took quite a few years and I broke some things. If you think that it's going to be cheaper to build your own pedals, it's probably not. But it is more fun. What do you reckon the most expensive part of a pedal is? You know, if you were to build your own. You would think it would be the transistors or the capacitors, the way that guitarists talk about them anyway. Transistors made of unobtainium, orange drop capacitors, tropical fish capacitors, paper and oil capacitors, bumblebee capacitors. Vintage capacitors do nothing, you know. You should probably just learn how to play the guitar and stop thinking about it. Transistors make a small difference, but not quite as much as people go on about. But do they cost a lot? Well, no, not really. Vintage capacitors, well, don't bother buying them. They might cost a lot of money, but that's only because people are stupid enough to buy them. And vintage transistors, they can be quite cheap really, even in comparison with modern ones made yesterday. A germanium AC128 transistor is about £3 on eBay. That's the one they use in a fuzz face. So where's the money going? Is it gold-plated jacks? Well, no, they're about £4.50 each. Is it the foot switch? No, they're about £2. Is it the power jack? Less than £1. What about the box they all go in? That's where we're spending the money, aren't we? Enclosures cost money. A standard Hammond enclosure, a plain one without any paint on, that's about £5.50. If you want some paint on it, well, that bumps up the price to about £10. And if you want a funny shape, well, you're going to be looking at about £15. And Hammond enclosures only come in certain colours. If you want some obscure colours, like hot pink or surf green, well then that's going to cost you a little bit extra. There's a fella on eBay that'll do that kind of thing, but you're looking at about £16. So if you're going to drill some holes in one, you don't want to make a mistake, because that might cost you £16. And if you make that mistake twice, that's £32. Expensive stuff, these enclosures. It's why I have a load of scrap enclosures in my garage, and a load of other stuff that have broke along the way. Now you've got the enclosure, what kind of drill are you going to get? Well, I've got a pillar drill in my garage, but you don't really need one of them. I'm drilling hundreds of cases. You might only drill about 10 of them. You could get away with a handheld drill. I've got a Black & Decker BCD 700S. Pretty good, high torque, does everything. It was only £50 from CPC, so it was a bargain. Then you'll need some drill bits. I'd recommend getting a box of drill bits, HSS drill bits, in all the different sizes, going up in 0.5mm increments. But you can also get a step drill bit, and I use one of them as well. All the different components that go into your pedal have different sizes that you'll need to drill out. 8mm for a standard alpha size pot, 10mm for your jacks, 12mm for your foot switch. It could be 6 or 12mm for your PSU socket. If you're going to put an LED in it, that's 6.5mm for an LED bezel. And if you're after a toggle switch, that's 6mm. On top of that, you're going to need a 4mm drill bit to drill your pilot holes. That's if you drill them the way I drill them. It's well known around these parts that I don't use perf board, not for my electronicals. I developed my own medium. I mix the idea of tag board and turret board, and I mix that with the way that Leo Fender used to make pickups. I use vulcanized fibre board and little brass eyelets. But that's not to say that I don't use perf board. Just don't use it for electronicals. I do, however, use it for making templates for drilling enclosures. I mean, think about it. Why is perf board the size it is? Why is the enclosure the size it is? Why are components the size they are? It's almost as if someone thought about it. What I do is take my enclosure, in this case, it's a posh Hammond one, painted black, in a sort of coffin shape. I leave the cellophane on, and I offer up the perf board, and using a Sharpie, I mark the edges of the pedal. In this case, the enclosure's kind of a little bit odd-shaped, so I just mark out the narrowest point. Then I get out Stanley, and I'm running down the holes, scoring the line, and that should allow me to break the perf board along the line. making the perfect template. And then I start laying out what I'm going to put in. I want to make sure everything I'm putting into the enclosure actually fits. I don't want any surprises after I've drilled it. Once I'm happy with where everything's going to go, I mark out the holes that I'm going to drill out from a template using the same Sharpie. And then I drill them out with a 4mm drill bit. I would usually do that with my pillar drill, but to show you, I'm going to use my hand drill. I'm going to put a piece of wood underneath the perf board so I don't drill a hole in my desk. Once you've completed your template, you can get your masking tape out and stick it to the top of your enclosure and start drilling your pilot holes. They're going to be 4mm as well. It's going to be a nice snug fit, and it'll mean that everything will be drilled in the right place. After you've done your pilot holes, then you drill out your holes to the right size. 12mm for your foot pedal, 8mm for your pot. And then you're just going to repeat the process for the sides of the pedal. I'm going to put my jacks at the top of the enclosure in this case because of the funny shape. If I put them on the sides, well then my jacks are going to be at funny angles. I think it's the most sensible way of doing things. Plus you get a few uses out of them, 20 to 30. If you make a master template, you can make all your pedals using it and they'll all line up really nicely. I use exactly the same technique if I'm modifying something to get my hole in exactly the right place. You'll find that it'll slow you down and stop you drilling a hole in the wrong place and making a mistake and ruining a pedal. So that's the enclosure drilled. Time to put an effect in it. But what kind of effect? Well, a black coffin-shaped pedal such as this is asking for a Tony Iommi Dallas Rangemaster, isn't it? With his modifications. It'd be rude not to. And I think considering this isn't a kit to be sent out, I can use some of my vintage germanium transistors, all of which cost me less than £1 each. So in the next episode, we'll see which transistors we're going to use. Will it be Soviet transistors, or American transistors, British transistors? High gain, low gain? What should the leakage be? We'll find out next time. If you found this informative and you want to find out how to make the rest of the pedal, well, I think you should subscribe. And if you're feeling very generous, you can visit some of the links in the description and sling us £1 or two. Just think about it like I'm busking. But instead of me playing Knocking on Heaven's Door, I'm showing you how to modify pedals. £1 or a coffee, it goes a long way, keeps the cameras rolling and keeps the modifications flowing. So until next time, happy modding.